Hey, happy Thursday to you all. Welcome to Football Americas. He is Shaka, Hislop on the drums. We have Herculez Gomez. Today is business, all business here. We're all kind of coordinated in a sense. It's Blazer
Day. I did not
Day.
expect to see Herc in a jacket. I think this is a first.
No, it's not first. It gets cold in here. I was going to wear a jersey, but it got cold. I was running late. Usually we'll meet each other and we'll walk over and you guys both ditch me. So I was like, I got nervous. I was like, what's going on? Was I running late?
Yeah, boy, you're okay. This is a lot to address there.
You okay?
Yeah.
You still
Caught me off guard.
We were separated, but you still got the memo. So anyway, we're also accompanied by our Kasey Keller. Case, what's going on?
It's all good. Just hoping for a better result for the Mariners tonight than last night.
Let's go, Doyers. Let's go.
Man. We'll be rivals on Monday, too. Texans at Seattle on Monday.
Blue Jays took it to him last night.
That's a conversation for a different day. Let's start off on the right foot. I mean, there's some lingering questions for the U.S. men's national team. We'll break that down. So, Case, I'll start with you because obviously when we see these kind of injuries in the international window, we saw it recently with Lamine Yamal, Hansi Flick, and the Spanish national team. So my question to you is, who are you pointing the finger to here when it comes to Pulisic's recent injury?
Well, I mean, a lot of it is speculation because we weren't there. We don't know exactly what was being said. But what I really saw when Christian came off and the way he looked at coaching staff, the way he looked at medical staff, tells me there was something going on. And he had told them that something wasn't right. We know that he played limited times in the first game because he was recovering. And I think, he's obviously frustrated. He wants to play every minute for the national team, but if you can't do it, you can't do it. And the hard part is then doing it in a game that doesn't matter and now missing games that do matter. So, maybe this will shake out. I kind of hope it doesn't. I hope it kind of stays internal and we don't get to talk about, they said this and no, they told me this. I hope it just kind of fixes itself internally, but the body language, the way he looked at some people told me, at least from my experience, that he told somebody he wasn't right. They really said he needed to play, and this was the result.
Did you see that same thing, Herc?
No, I didn't see that. This is a player who has a history of soft tissue injuries. And if he were coming into camp and it was addressed that he had some sort of concern with the soft tissue, being the hamstring, then you totally don't risk him.
There was talk of ankle irritation, right?
And I'll get to that. But there's never, at any point in time, the talk about his hamstring, the talk about a muscular injury. It was Christian Pulisic has been dealing with ankle pain. Case can tell you, Shaka can tell you, there's no player on earth that plays 100% left with a hamstring injury. While I sympathize with the Milan supporters, while I sympathize with Milan as a club, why? Because Christian Pulisic is our most important player to date. Christian Pulisic right now is leading Serie A in goals. He's also leading in assists. He's one of the most dangerous players they have in Italian football. So I sympathize with them. And I understand them being annoyed. But the frustration should not be at Mauricio Pochettino. The frustration should not be at U.S. Soccer. It's a FIFA fixture window. It's not their player. Now it's their player. The same way it was their player when he got injured with AC Milan and couldn't make the national team. The same way when they weren't playing for anything and could only move from 8th to 9th and ended up staying at 9th, he was still playing after the European dreams were over last season. This is part of football. Christian Pulisic got injured as many other players in this FIFA fixture window have gotten injured.
So Pochettino isn't to blame, Shaq?
No, not for me. Not at all. If Christian Pulisic was coming into this game with an injury, ankle or hamstring, whatever it may be, he has to inform, and he has the standing to inform Pochettino and the coaching staff that I'm not fit to play this game, or I can only play this amount of time over the couple of games. So you have to assume that he didn't. The only constant is injuries are a part of this game. Getting them, and whenever you do get them, it's never a good time. So you have to take that into some consideration. And this isn't just a AC Milan Pochettino issue. We were having this conversation about a year ago. Exactly. Alphonso Davies and Bayern Munich. a month ago, Lamine Yamal and Barcelona. That's just, unfortunately, how these things go. You pick up injuries when you play this game. Sometimes it happens on international duty, and when it does, your club isn't happy. That's not going to change whether players pick up injuries or not. That's not going to change some of the usual fallout. At this point, it's just par for the course.
Kasey, I wanted to ask you what you thought about what Pochettino said. Obviously, he was asked about the situation following the match. And he said, I think the temperature difference between Austin and Colorado, that can affect your body and everything. That is difficult. But yes, that is a thing we need to fix for the future when we come from Europe because the altitude can affect things. Did this, to you, have anything to do with Christian Pulisic ultimately getting injured again?
Well, I mean, first I want to comment on Shaka. I don't know what coaches he played for where he got to tell them, I'm going to play 15 minutes today because I'm feeling something, or I'm just coming into camp and maybe I got something. I don't need to play. I can just, you have some heck of a relationships with your coaches, Shaka. That's impressive, man. I had coaches saying, get on the pitch and stop the ball from going in the net. Those were the coaches I had. I'm glad you had those relationships.
But Kasey, to that point, if you're not fit, you say to the coach, I'm not fit. He's not. Christian Pulisic is not a 17-year-old at this point.
Yeah, Kasey, but Robinson seems to have that relationship with Pochettino to tell him when he can and can't play.
Well, I think Robinson has been not fit, like seriously not fit.
Right.
And I think Christian is in that situation where he's playing every game for Milan. He comes into the national team, and now he's feeling it because he's played every game for Milan. And then he's like going in and saying, well, God, I'm not sure I can do this. And then at some stage, the national team coach is like, hey, come on. You need to play. You need to, you're our star player. Get out there and perform. And yes, I agree with you, Shaka, 100%. If he's not fit, he has to be strong enough to be able to say he's not fit. But Herc, and I know it's not that easy just to tell the manager who really wants you to play and is pressuring you to play that, I'm taking the night
No, I
off.
agree, Case.
We all know that.
Especially for the second time, because he already said that once this summer.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But what I'm saying here is,
exactly.
I think it's totally different if he's nursing a muscular injury and there's a doubt. Then it would be on Mauricio Pochettino and the staff. You knew that he was nursing a muscular injury, and you put him out and you risked him. I'm dealing with pain. Santiago Jimenez is dealing with pain in his ankle with the Mexican national team and with AC Milan, and has been dealing with it for quite some time, and not too many have reported it, and he's still out there for club and for country because he knows he has to be out there. His standing isn't secured. I think the ankle wasn't on Christian's mind in this game. To me, this is terrible luck. To me, this has nothing to do with you put him out there and you risk him. If he comes out with an ankle injury, we could have a different conversation here, but it's a moot point when it's not a muscular injury that he was nursing.
Well, Herc, what was the question we always kind of asked the medical staff? Am I going to hurt it any worse if I play?
Correct.
Or is it just pain management?
Exactly.
If it's pain management, give me a little shot. Give me a few. Let me suck down some Advils and let's make this happen.
Well, they gave me some stronger
if it is
stuff.
a muscular issue,
Advil Plus.
I missed Vioxx for so many. When they took that off the market, that was such a great drug. But go back to the
Let's
go back to your other
topic.
question, Christina. Travel is always an issue, and I knew players that played in England, and were always dealing with little muscle issues. They moved to Spain or Italy where there's a warmer climate for the majority of the time, and they didn't have the same muscle injuries. So, I think there's something there. Is it tough to go from Austin, go to kind of a warmer climate to not only a colder climate, but then altitude? 100%. And what's nice to see that in this World Cup, they've regionalized groups, because in the past, what the U.S. had to do in Brazil, what teams had to do in the '94 World Cup, I'm happy that they've recognized that it doesn't make sense to be flying teams in big countries all over the place.
Well, they better get used to it, Case, because they have 2 games in LA, and in the summer in Los Angeles is beautiful, and they're going to go to Kansas City, to a very humid and temperate Kansas City. What you just read from Pochettino, I think it's a direct reference to Malik Tillman and what Malik Tillman was nursing and that muscle soreness and going from an environment that was very hot, very humid to now an environment where we saw the pictures of the players and they were cold. They were bundled up, and it could be a little different. I think more than anything here, I'm sorry, Seattle, LA. You're exactly right, producer. Seattle, LA. I don't know why I thought Kansas City. What I'm trying to get at here, I think he's more referring to the difficulties of not having a national stadium. Most national teams in our world have a national stadium, and they get to chill and concentrate in one place, and nobody moves. That's their base. And he's realizing the realities of the U.S. men's national team, that there is no national stadium. If you're with the U.S. men's national team, you're a footballer with the U.S. men's national team, you can play in one of many, many Major League Soccer stadiums that have a contract with U.S. Soccer. That's going to be a reality here, and I think that's what stems in his frustration.
With the demand that his players already have and that they're kind of coming into and expressing their concerns here for the U.S. men's national team. The reality for AC Milan, though, when it comes to Pulisic, he'll at least miss the games versus Pisa, Atalanta, Roma, Parma. As I mentioned, they'll try to have him back for that Milan derby on the 23rd. So that's a lingering question. Let's take it to some other ones here for the U.S. men's national team. In talking about the best 11, Case, I'll start with you. Where do Weah and McKennie fit best in this starting 11?
Well, I think that's really what we're going to find out over these friendly windows. Is I think Pochettino's starting to realize that he has to have his best players on the pitch. That the experimentation of bringing some guy in and saying, "Hey, you do this job for me." Well, he's starting to realize that the squad is maybe a little smaller than he wanted to project to us in those earlier windows. So I think what he's going to have to do is maybe even what has had to happen for every national team camp ever since I was involved is some of your best players, to get them on the pitch, are going to have to play maybe not in the position you would specifically want them to be in, because somebody else is in that position already who's doing just that little bit better job in that position. So I think there's going to be some flexibility there, and some guys are going to be playing maybe not in their ideal position, but because they're still a better player than the other options, then they're going to have to figure that out as well with the work of the coaching staff and just how to get this team playing the best.
Herc, what did you think of McKennie playing in that same position in these 2 games?
I wasn't a fan of it. I know that he's played that position. It's not foreign to him. He's played at Juventus for Open Minors. And he's had some goals, Champions League, in that double 10 position in an attacking role. But that's not where he's best suited. His characteristics or the attributes where he could shine on the field are when he's allowed to arrive late into the box from a midfield position as an 8. I don't think the double pivot suits him either, which is why I think like Weston McKennie would be one of a few players who could be a casualty of this new system. Whatever players you select going into the World Cup camp is going to give you a good idea of how you're going to play. You need to see who's available, who's healthy, and cater to the players available. But right now, it looks like this system is here to stay. And if there are 2 players that I think will be casualties, it is Timothy Weah and Weston McKennie. Weston McKennie isn't a double 10. Most likely, you would want him in a midfield like you saw in a 4-3-3 during the World Cup with the Tyler Adams and another player who has maybe the flexibility of being one of those players, a ball progressor or another 8 or even a ball winner if you can. He doesn't have the tactical discipline, I think, for Mauricio Pochettino to like him as a double pivot. So I think he'll continue to play him as a 10. And Timothy Weah, if everybody is healthy, you're assuming that it's Anthony Robinson, left wing back, and Serginho Dest, right wing back. The wide players that we used to know under Greg Berhalter's U.S. men's national team are no longer wide players. Those players are outside backs. They're wing backs. The wingers, now like a Timothy Weah, he would essentially have to be a wing back. I don't see him playing over a healthy, there's a big asterisk, that healthy Anthony Robinson and a healthy Sergiño Dest. These two players could be casualties of this new formation.
And it seems to be this recurring thing with Timothy Weah at the club level, at the national team level. Where do you think he fits best here at the national team level, Shaka?
I'm with her. That I think I like to see Timothy Weah on the right-hand side as that overlapping right wing back.
Yeah.
My issue, I don't want to say issue, is that I think he's outstanding going forward, but I'm not sure how great he is defensively against a better opponent. And he's not better than Sergiño Dest.
At breaking teams down.
At breaking teams down. And Sergiño Dest, Sergiño Dest is just a better wing back. Anthony Robinson is arguably the best in his position in the world in some regard. So that's not. If he's competing with anybody, it's with Sergiño Dest, who for me is better than him. Weston McKennie, though, I'll disagree with Herc in that I like to think of Weston McKennie sitting just in front of that back three that Pochettino uses, and maybe alongside Tyler Adams. Just again, because you're using two wing backs, you want two defensive-minded midfielders who can fill in those opportunities. When wing backs go forward, if there are gaps at the left, and Weston McKennie covers a lot of ground, has an incredible understanding of the game. And for me, that's where I think he fits best in Pochettino's system.
You want to jump in?
No, I'm just.
I can get to the next question.
It's a Weston McKennie and Timothy Weah are always in my team.
Yeah.
I have to find a way to get them on the
heart
field.
looks like you're
No, because of what they've proven.
Yeah.
You know, when at the height of this U.S. men's national, this core group of players, they've been players that have excelled for this group, so they have to be in for me.
Right.
But if you're Mauricio Pochettino, I don't think that's the case, and I don't think Mauricio Pochettino likes what he sees defensively in those principles of discipline, or else we would have seen Weston McKennie playing one of these two games in a position like that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see what happens with him. Let's take it to our next lingering question. Herc, I'm going to start with you on this one. And you just talked about Tyler Adams. So who partners with him at holding midfield?
Your guess is as good as mine. If I go off of what I've seen in this window, I really like what Christian Roldan added against Australia.
But also this last showing from Roldan, setting up those 2 goals against Australia. Case, do you agree with what Herc was saying about Roldan specifically?
Well, I think Christian did a great job of coming out of the wilderness and proving to the management staff that he belongs in the national team conversation. I mean, I tell you, the one player that is still confusing me is how is Johnny Cardoso not being successful with the national team? I know he's been injured at Atletico Madrid, but how do you go from having a great season at Betis, being bought by a bunch of money with Atletico Madrid, and not even having okay performances with the national team? So I'm still holding out that Cardoso is going to get fit, have some good significant numbers for Atletico Madrid. And then in the new year, we're going to hopefully see the real Johnny Cardoso play for the national team.
You can even add in there Yunus Musa if you want. There's still, I think this is still an open competition. Sure. And if those two players, like Malik Tillman, Johnny Cardoso, maybe just needs that opportunity to show out for the U.S. men's national team. But Yunus Musa is also another player that people have been high on in this program that could still maybe be an outside factor there.
I will say this, though. Coming into this break, Pochettino said nobody's spot is guaranteed, which I absolutely poo-pooed. I said, listen, you can pick this team, at least 8 of these players are going to be starting come next summer. And then up rolls Christian Roldan and prove everything about that wrong and just kind of prove Pochettino right, that players are able to step up and put in big performances. I love that. I understand it was in Australia, all changed, but in Australia that came into that fixture on a very good run of form, playing with a lot of confidence. And Roldan just kind of proved everything that Pochettino was saying right and poo-pooed what I was saying. Credit to him.
I was going to ask you to repeat poo-pooed, and you did.
If you think about it, Chris, that's probably the position that most has competition, or that Mauricio Pochettino maybe most has doubts about, because we've seen Sebastian Berhalter play there. You know, we've seen Johnny Cardoso, we've seen Yunus Musa, we've seen at times in a tactical setup Anthony Robinson step up into the midfield in the early windows with Mauricio Pochettino. So it's been a revolving door. That's probably the one spot where there's been the most competition.
Yeah, listen, having a depth chart is great, but when you have to make those decisions, somebody has to stay out. But going back to two players that were already mentioned here, Shaq, Yunus Musa, we know the inconsistencies of Johnny Cardoso when it comes to the men's national team. What do you make of maybe both of them with that opportunity?
I am really not sure. I think to Herc's point that those positions are wide open, and we've got a couple of windows now between now and the start of the World Cup, and there's an opportunity for somebody to step up, for somebody to stake a claim, because it is one of the few positions I think that are still up for grabs. And I know we are having this discussion about a number of others, including number 9. But this one certainly is still there for someone to stake a serious claim towards between now and next summer.
Yeah, a lot of things up in the air. That takes us to our next lingering question, at least that we saw linger. It makes me think of Chandler from Friends. But here's our next question now. Did the center backs leave more doubt than certainty, Case?
Well, I mean, I think just like kind of that defensive midfield role, I think Chris Richards has pretty much solidified himself both for play from club and country. And then it's, you know, obviously, I mean, Reem's done a great job, but is not getting any younger. Your partnership issues, but there's one thing that Shaka kind of mentioned a little bit with some other positions. There is going to be some situations where you're going to play a team in the World Cup that you're not going to have a lot of the ball, and that you're going to have to just defend for the sake of defending. And that's why I was a little bit, I know that maybe we wouldn't have seen that much with the two teams we played against today, but I still feel that Cameron Carter-Vickers is the best true defender of the center back crew. Now, if you're in a situation where you're going to have a lot of the ball and you're playing out of the back and you're trying to be all progressive, yeah, maybe he's not your guy. But if you've got a world-class striker in your opposition, to me, he's the best guy to nullify that person. So I'd love to see him get a little bit of an opportunity.
Herc?
Wasn't enough for Mauricio Pochettino to get him off the bench for a minute in this camp. So I would be very worried if I'm Cameron Carter-Vickers, who I could see what Case is talking about in just terms of pure defending could be up there. He plays for a team that has the majority of the ball every single game they play in the Scottish Premiership, so he should be used to both type of setups, but I honestly think this is very easy for Mauricio Pochettino. If we go by what we've seen at this team's ceiling, which I think everybody here would say was probably this last window, he really liked what he saw from Miles Robinson. He likes Chris Richards, we all do, and I still think he values Tim Ream for a number of reasons. I would be very surprised if he moves from that. There's two very athletic center backs in a Miles Robinson and a Chris Richards. Oftentimes in this setup, we saw them deploy a high line. That's how they got burned versus Ecuador. But if you're going to deploy a high line, you need players who are very athletic. Those are two of the three players that are very athletic. The third being Tim Ream, who's going to be protected by the other two, and his two holding mids. I would be very surprised if we have this conversation right before the World Cup and Miles Robinson and Chris Richards for Mauricio Pochettino aren't two of the stronger candidates to be with Tim Ream.
So with that in mind, if you play Tim Ream as one of a back three, you have two attacking wing backs. Where along that back three do you?
It's a great question, because we've seen that if he's not protected by two center backs, if he's on the left-hand side, he can get burned. And it's happened in the, I believe, game versus Japan when they played a three-back center back system, where you saw that maybe Max Harveston was flying too much and leaving him isolated, and you can get caught. That's what Mauricio Pochettino is going to have to figure out, because I agree with you. The benefit of having a Tim Ream is that you're going to have passing lanes that he can hit. You're going to have that big switch with the beautiful left foot of his, but you're going to give up a hell of a lot physically.
I wonder, especially if the U.S. goes, as they go deep in the competition, playing against a better opponent, how can they or will they switch that back for a lot of those reasons. You don't have the ball. You want to be better protected, and a back three sounds great, but it's a whole lot harder in practice than it is in theory.
But back, obviously, we have our two resident goalkeepers with us on this show today. So, of course, we have to talk about the goalkeeping position. That takes us to our last lingering question with the U.S. men's national team. Shaq, I'll start with you. Was Pochettino fair with Matt Turner?
Define fair. Possession is 9/10 of the law.
In California.
You didn't get a single minute, Shaq.
Fries is his preferred number one, and I think he showed that. Matt Turner in his last outing was the 4 against Switzerland. I think Fries grew into the position during the course of the Gold Cup, and now he's giving him minutes to kind of understand what he's in for, understand his position, understand the team that he'll be playing behind. I don't think there's any question at this point that Fries is Pochettino's preferred number one. And now it's about getting him those much needed minutes. Turner was the number one for a very long time until he wasn't. That's just the nature of the game.
These two know more about the goalkeeping position than I ever will. But I asked Kasey last time we were on. I was like, Kasey, what's the difference stylistically between the two goalkeepers? Because I don't see much of a difference. So if there isn't much of a difference, then if you're the coach, you go for the player who's more confident. And clearly, Matt Fries right now is more confident. And Matt Turner had a rough go at Arsenal, rough go at Nottingham Forest, rough go with the U.S. men's national team. And right now, his confidence isn't where it needs to be for Mauricio Pochettino. And I think it's evident that he values Matt Fries because if you look at the last, I believe, 12 games, he's started 11 of those games. He's not let the position go. And I agree with Shaq. If you're the U.S. men's national team manager and you realize that you've got a small window to get your players ready, and some of those players might not have World Cup experience or international experience, you better get them that experience. So I think that's what he's doing with Matt Fries right now.
Kasey, thoughts?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I talked to Herc about the other day was I think Matt Turner has, at least from what I've seen from Fries, has a better ability to come up with the big save. Now, 100% correct that he'd gone through a couple years where he was barely playing club football. When he did start to play at Forest, it was riddled with mistakes. When he then had an opportunity in the summer, it was riddled with mistakes. And the conversation is what we kept hearing was, Matt Turner, you need to get games, get your confidence back, and let's see what happens. So he came back to Major League Soccer. Now, I'm pretty much, unfortunately for Matt, no playoffs, so he's pretty much finished now. That he came back for games. He still didn't get an opportunity to play, which is okay because I'm not a big fan of just play this guy, play that guy. You know, I have no problem with Fries playing and Turner, but you know that's one of those things. If you made this decision to come back to Major League Soccer because you were being told that if I got games, I'd get a chance with the national team, then I would say, yes, that's a little unfair that you came back, you played, you know, games for New England, and then you still didn't get an opportunity. But we're still in this situation. I agree with Shaka as well, that Pochettino is clearly pointing towards Matt Fries as his number one. But I still want to see that performance from Matt Fries where I go, dang, that was a good save. And the timing of that save. You know, it's like, yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of mistakes, which is great. I'm seeing him getting more and more comfortable with his communication, with kind of his presence. But I'm still waiting for that save that I go, okay, that's going to keep us in a game.
Yeah, and we know that this one's very much up in the air. On the other side of the field, the number 9 is still very much up for grabs. Between the goalkeeping position and the number 9, it seems like Pochettino has a little bit more of a clear idea when it comes to the goalkeeper, Herc.
I think it's set. I'd be very surprised. Now, He's been very fair to Matt Turner because he told him he needs to play, found a place to play, and he made it back to the national team. He hasn't made it back to starting 11. He said the same thing to Paxton Aronson, and Paxton Aronson hasn't come back to the national team since he signed with the Colorado Rapids. So in terms of Matt Turner, I think he's been very upfront with Matt Turner, and I think it's Matt Turner's now to fight for it. And you guys know how this is when you're the goalkeeper. It's not like the 9 position. It's not like when you're in the midfield where you can get a game and you can find a goal. You're probably not going to find a game until somebody lets it go. And that's where Matt Turner finds himself today.
Yeah, we'll have to see if Pochettino finds the answers to all of our lingering questions for the U.S. men's national team. Another opportunity maybe for Matt Turner mid-November against Paraguay, and then they'll have that match in Tampa against Uruguay. But for now, we say goodbye and thank you to our Kasey Keller.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks as always, Case. We do want to remind you that ESPN FC is available daily on ESPN+. Javier Aguirre, we have questions of our own. Herc, I'll start with you. Are absences to blame for poor form / results? We know important players like Raúl Jiménez, Edson Álvarez weren't available for this window.
I don't know what Raúl Jiménez could have done against the 4-0 shellacking against Colombia or Edson Álvarez. Raúl Jiménez is a very important player for the Mexican national team, absolutely. But he's not Messi, Lamine Yamal. He's not going to do something by himself. He needs the sum of his parts. So while they would have helped, the outcome would have been probably the same against Colombia. Maybe he would have been sharper in front of the net as a Julián Quiñones against Ecuador. Maybe that'll help. But when you look at, and you can look at the list, Huescas wasn't really a starter with the Mexican national team. Henry Martin, he's been injured for about a year and a half. Now, Gilberto Mora, that's to your own doing. You thought it was better for him to play against U20 players, against kids. Roberto Alvarado, I mean, who are we talking about here? We're really talking about Raúl Jiménez. That's the one guy, if you were being honest.
Alvaro's been a go-to, though.
What's he done with the Mexican national team? So there's nobody who changes the outcome or the complexion of this team, if we're being honest. This Mexican national team, if we look at who they are, their reality, they've played against Switzerland. They played against Turkey. They played against Japan. They played against South Korea. They played against Colombia, and they played against Ecuador. Those are all World Cup teams. Teams that are in the World Cup right now. They beat one of them. And it was when Turkey put on their alternate lineup, and it did very well, I believe, in the second half against Turkey. They had a good game. They beat one of those teams. And we're not talking about the Argentinas of the world, the Frances of the world, the Englands of the world. We're not talking about, the Spains of the world. We're talking about teams that are trying to get out of the group and trying to win one game, if not two. That's who we're talking about right now. So I don't think the absences would have changed much in Mexico's complexion and who they are. I think deep down, Javier Aguirre has an identity crisis of who he is and who these players are. He's a defensive coach at heart, and when he lets the reins go just a little and he gives this team some space, teams abuse it, and you saw Colombia do it.
Jack?
The embarrassment against Colombia, those players coming in don't change that. But you probably should have won against Ecuador, but for a very bad decision, in my opinion, you walk away with a tie and aren't able to boast of that win against a team that finished second in CONMEBOL qualifying. So I think there's an opportunity. There's potential here for this Mexican team. I'm not sure how high that ceiling is, but this run of games on Javier Aguirre is not as bad as the scoreboard shows. These are decent opponents that you've done a good job in at least matching on the night, exception against Colombia, of course.
But what does it say about the attitude of this team? Because that's something that Javier Aguirre was talking about. Coming
Which
from
was
that 4-0.
terrible. I mean, he threw his players under the bus.
Right, saying that they were slacking off defensively.
Well, no, just saying that the questioning their attitude, because that game had nothing to do with attitude. That was quality. And that was Colombia's second team. Listen, there's no shame in losing to Colombia. This is a team that oftentimes doesn't play to their ceiling.
Was he questioning the attitude, though?
Yes. This is a team that oftentimes doesn't play to their ceiling, but when they do, they've strung together 29 unbeaten games and one of the hottest teams in the world, and they've got world-class players. They've got players that can hurt you, so there's no shame in losing. It's being naive in how you go about playing them. And I thought Javier Aguirre had more to do with that game than the players' attitude or lack thereof. That was being naive. Javier Aguirre, Rafa Marquez being naive and thinking you play toe-to-toe with a team that can just abuse you. And the goals they let in, by the way, set-piece goals, individual mistakes. You can question what you want if you think it's that, but there's an evident lack of quality when you compare some of these Colombian players to the Jorge Sanchez's of the world,
right?
To the, with all due respect, Luis Angel Malagons of the world. That you can be a very good team, but you've got to be a stingier team. You've got to be a smarter team, and they weren't. So to me, that's what upsets me about this Mexican national team is I've seen them be good on their day. Se murieron de nada. Like they literally just, they were there, but they didn't compete.
Let's take it to the goalkeeping position now because we talked a lot about Malagon in the highlights. That takes us to our next question. Shaq, I'll start with you. Is Malagon's starting spot now in doubt?
Whether you can be blamed for the goals or not, when your team concedes heavily, eventually you're going to find yourself under pressure.
What if Turner and Freese had Tim Howard still in the picture? Because that's where Mexico finds himself right now with Memo Ochoa still very much in the picture. And I think the nostalgia of Memo Ochoa and the Memo Ochoa, who, let's be quite frank, comes out every 4 years. You hear very little of him in club football, but every 4 years in the World Cup, you're like, oh, Memo Ochoa with the hair, and he's still making the saves, and he's blocking Robert Lewandowski penalty kicks, and he's blocking a Neymar header. That's his moment. It's not crazy to think, and this being thought and it's being discussed, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that with Malagon struggling and the uncertainty of what you've seen from Rangel at the international level leaves you maybe wanting a Memo Ochoa. Is Malagon's starting spot in jeopardy?
I knew this was going to happen.
No, but tell me if that's not a narrative. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong.
So it's a narrative.
I'm laughing because this is what I predicted. Oh, now you want Memo Ochoa?
Exactly.
Now you want it?
But here's the thing with Luis Angel Malagon. He plays for what many is the biggest club in Mexico, and he's been very successful with that club, but you've not seen the same player at the international level. In fact, one of his very first games against Cameroon in San Diego, massive mistake, gives up a goal. Let's go back just recently if you want to go hey, that was when he first started. Back in March at the Nations League, Thierry Henry was a trending topic in Mexico for criticizing Malagon against Canada and against Panama, the semifinal and final, saying this goalie is a circus. And then if you say, well, he had a bad Nations League, let's go to the Gold Cup against opposition like the Dominican Republic, Suriname, against Honduras, and against the United States in the final, mistakes left and right, heavily questioned, and now more mistakes against better opposition. So yes, he should be questioned, and yes, his job should be in jeopardy because he's not proven to be the number one.
Memo Ochoa is behind the glass right now, and it says, break in case of emergency. Are we at this point with Mexico?
By the sounds of it, he's had a great international window. I get Herc's point about Ochoa, because it's absolutely true. He seems to come to life every 4 years and all of a sudden announce himself or re-announce himself to world football. I'll take your advice on Rangel as well. I thought it was a good performance against Ecuador,
yes.
And one that certainly you can build on, and you take it from there. I am just, while I take your point about Ochoa, how old now? 39.
Yes, I think he's 40 now. He'll be 41 in the World Cup.
I'm not convinced that a 41-year-old, given the expectation that will come, just by virtue of where this World Cup is, there will be an immense pressure and an immense expectation on Mexico next summer. I'm just not convinced that a 41-year-old is the answer to that.
Well, I don't know. My thought is, you know who could really handle that pressure? Memo Ochoa versus what we're seeing right now with Malagon, because it's not only at the national team level, we've seen that at the Club America level as well. I know I described him as a break in case of emergency. Maybe that could apply to our next question as well. Our next player. Is Gil Mora the real winner of the window, Herc?
No. No, he's
Because he wasn't there?
Not just because he wasn't there. You can make the case that Memo Ochoa is the winner of the window, or an Edson Alvarez is the winner of the window, because it shows how important he is. You're saying a defensive, your leader, your captain, et cetera, et cetera. Gil Mora should have been there. To me, he's a loser in this window. He should have been there. I don't want to see Gil Mora against the U20 Argentines. I want to see Gil Mora against Colombia, against Ecuador, against opposition where he can test himself. Because if you feel like I feel that Gil Mora has a spot on this Mexican national team, then you better start preparing him for his first World Cup. You better start saying, hey, I want to see this kid, what type of moxie he has against good competition, better competition, not CONCACAF competition, with all due respect to the Honduras of the world or the U.S. men's national teams of the Gold Cup world. I want to see what he's made of here. This was a missed opportunity. I think he's a hell of a player, and what he's doing at his age is remarkable. But you prove it here. This is where. And if you really think he's going to help you in the World Cup, he should be here in these games. So I can't call him a winner in this window. I think we're losers for not getting to see him in this window.
Maybe we can clip that. We're the losers in this against Herc to Black. Shaq, what do you think?
I'm with Herc on this. Kind of given who the opponents were this window. No, I think there is value to playing against other under-20s and kind of just continue to establish yourself and grow in your presence and standing in the game, and you can bring that to a bigger stage. But given the opponents that Mexico had this window, given the level of opposition of Colombia and Ecuador, it would have been, I think there's far greater value in terms of next summer's preparation for Gil Mora playing against those two teams than he would have gotten, as much as I'm a fan of playing against younger players and continue to establish yourself in that way. In terms of next summer, it would have been better for him to be here.
Right, because we're not doubting his skills, right? We know that he is now capable of being on that World Cup roster, but mentally preparing such a young kid too and being used to.
We're comparing him with the Mexican national team pool. Right. That's why we think he's ready. We're not comparing him to the rest of the world, the Colombias of the world, the Ecuadors of the world, the Japans of the world, the South Koreas of the world. We think he's ready because we look at this Mexican pool and we're like, well, yeah, I'd rather see Gilberto Mora than Charlie Rodriguez.
Yeah, but this.
I'd rather see him than Orbelín Pineda.
Es lo que hay argument.
No. But you would rather see Gil Mora. That's why you think he should be there. I want to see him there to see how he competes against these players, not because the lack of players that are in this pool.
Yeah, I completely agree. So that is definitely up in the air. We'll see how Gil Mora does in his next participation.
Because anytime you bet on Jamaica and what I think in the Caribbean is the greatest player pool that exists, they let you down. So it's a team that is absolutely 100% beatable. But Shaq says they don't have a finisher. They don't have anybody put the ball in the back of the net. So you could assume you get 3 points from Bermuda because they'll have nothing to play for on the last final match day. But you need to get that win against Jamaica. And then you got to hope somewhere along the lines, Curacao, who I think is a testament to this region and the growth. One of the two teams, Curacao, the other one being Suriname, of how much this region has grown in the Caribbean, you got to hope they falter along the way.
Curacao are a really interesting story. Given how small that country is, the job that Dick Advocaat has been able to do with them, bringing in a lot of Dutch-based players into the squad, and they've exceeded every expectation. But to point out, it's not a great Curacao team. This is a team that, again, I think Trinidad and Tobago should have beaten twice. We drew with them both times. The big surprise came in them beating Jamaica, playing on that AstroTurf. It absolutely does make a difference. Curacao were 2 up, and then we're drawing with Bermuda 2-2. Bermuda has been the whipping boy of the group, the greatest respect to Bermuda, but Bermuda gave them a real scare. They were able to come through it and won that game 3-2, but it just shows their frailty. And as I mentioned, they had 1 shot on target against Trinidad and Tobago, yet come away with a draw. No, it's a big ask for us. For me, Jamaica are the best team in the group. So now we have to go and turn the tables on a traditional rival that traditionally has gotten the best of us. But it can be done because we are playing well if we could just find the finishes.
The receipts are starting to come out, but the final receipt hasn't made its way yet to this CONCACAF group. Speaking of the CONCACAF group, Herc, what team are you most disappointed in after what you saw?
Panama.
window.
Panama. If you look at what Thomas Christensen has done with this team since he took over, very unfortunate not to make the last World Cup. It took a ridiculous, miraculous second half run from Costa Rica where I believe they dropped points in one game and still didn't lose that game. They drew. They ran the table in the second half of World Cup qualifying to make it to a World Cup. They're now in this generational shift, and what you thought would be the strongest team out of the bunch would be Panama, a team that's already played in 2 continental finals, a Gold Cup final they lost against Mexico, and a Nations final they lost against Mexico. And a team that, if you look against the traditional powers, Mexico, Canada, the United States men's national team, has fared pretty well and always competed against these teams. They have the better of the United States men's national team as of late. You would have thought in a World Cup qualification process without the United States men's national team, without Mexico, without the Canadian men's national team, that they would have ran the table. And here they are, 1 win, 4 match days, 3 goals scored, with one of the highest paid coaches in CONCACAF at the moment in this World Cup qualifying campaign. And they don't necessarily control their own destiny. They do in the sense that they have to win. They got very fortunate in their last game that they put the ball in the back of the net in the 96th minute, or we're seriously having talks about them not qualifying to this next World Cup. Guatemala right now has 2 home games. They win both games, one of those against Panama. They are in.
Yeah.
Suriname doesn't look like it's slowing down. If I'm a Panamanian national team fan, I'm feeling queasy. I'm feeling uneasy. And if I'm Thomas Christensen, I'm asking myself, what happened?
Yeah, we'll see if they can turn it around here in the next match day. Number 5 here for World Cup qualifiers. We are so close here on November 13th. Bermuda versus Curacao, Suriname, El Salvador, Trinidad and Tobago against Jamaica, Haiti, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Panama, and Nicaragua against Honduras. Taking to some good news for Canada and Bayern Munich. Fullback Alphonso Davies gave an injury update during the international window, saying, quote, "I'm running and training well. Just need to get a bit more muscle mass on my right leg." The 24-year-old is hoping to be back soon from that ACL tear he suffered on international duty last March. Looking forward to his return and to Der Klassiker this weekend.